We had a 1 egg omelette with chopped up zucchini, mushrooms, a little bit of spring onion, and some parsley. With 2 Vita Wheats and a black coffee, which probably wasn't my breakfast a year ago if you'd asked me the same question.
Welcome to the Uncommon Podcast, and I'm your host, Jordan Michaelides. We interview unique individuals and investigate interesting topics, helping you to build the uncommon sense crucial to increasing performance. Our guests have included venture capitalists, strength coaches, human rights lawyers, chefs, restaurateurs, and spoken word poets, just to name a few. And we're really inspired by the likes of Joe Rogan, Tim Ferriss, and Charlie Munger, who I think Charlie in particular has influenced us, always emphasizing that building worldly wisdom or that uncommon sense is critical for your growth as an individual. If you want to learn more about these previous guests, you can head to neural.com/podcast, neurale.com/podcast. If you like this episode, make sure you leave us a review. It's really important for us to grow our community, and those reviews are crucial to that. In return, you can win a few prizes that we've had for our launch competition, including an Apple Watch 2, my favorite, the Kindle Paperwhite, and an Amazon gift card. For further steps, again, head to neural.com/podcast, where you can also get the show notes for this episode and sign up to have priority access as a cognitive insider, as we call it. Don't forget to like us on Facebook. That's just at Neurale, Neurale, and the same for Twitter as well. In this episode, we recorded with Chris Michaelides, who is my uncle, a businessman, and in many ways the head of the wider Michaelides family. The reason for this episode is slightly selfish, in that I wanted to gradually capture the memories and knowledge of the older generation within my family in particular. And that is because in the earlier years, my grandmother, or Chris's mother, was really the matriarch of our family, that glue that bound us all together. But her recent battle with dementia has been a somewhat swift changing of the guard as her memory has gradually faded, and that's made me really realize how important it is to capture the knowledge and memories for the next generation down the track. I think Chris's wealth of knowledge in businesses and life is invaluable, and he's always shown, like with a lot of the people within my family, the value of hard work or grit. As a secondary father figure, I've looked up to Chris over the years and learnt immensely by picking his brain in business and life, and my hope is that you enjoy this episode and this conversation as much as I did. Some of the topics we included were his new health change through more targeted dieting, and I know that he's lost an immense amount of weight. I think it was over 15 kilos. We talked about lessons learnt from his parents, and in particular that strong work ethic, the attraction to creative industries and running businesses in those industries, and I guess lessons learned from that, his core principles and beliefs, and therefore how he defines success, traveling to Africa on safari, and the importance of eating dinner as a family. So, without further ado, please enjoy this conversation with Chris Michaelides. Alrighty, well, we're live now, Chris.
Okay.
Thanks for joining.
That's okay. Pleased to be here.
Maybe let's start off with, what did you have for breakfast today?
Well, I've been on a eating plan for a good half of this year, where I've shed quite a few kilos, and I've tried to maintain that as much as I can, and it incorporates not eating too many carbs and things that you might otherwise eat, and too much of anything. So I actually had a 1 egg omelette with chopped up zucchini, mushrooms, a little bit of spring onion, and some parsley. With 2 Vita Wheats, and a black coffee, which probably wasn't my breakfast a year ago if you'd asked me the same question. In fact, I can assure you it wasn't.
Tell us about this eating plan, because I know you've mentioned it offhand. You have lost a lot of weight. How much weight have you lost, and what's involved in this?
Well, it happened at a good time in my life, in that I had the time to apply to it, and Kim, my wife, is the cook in our house, and without her, I just wouldn't have been able to do it, because I'm a bit lazy when it comes to preparing food, etc. Not so much lazy, but I leave it too late, so I'm really hungry, whereas she's a bit of a planner. What's involved is you simply, it was an eating plan and offering, a commercial offering that we both took up and paid some money to be involved in. And it was very detailed. We had blood samples taken and all sorts of things before we went on it to determine our level of fitness and capacity to go on the program. And then our food intake was reduced substantially, and the type of foods was seriously reduced. No sugar, no carbs, and that included rice, potato, a whole range of sweet vegetables even were cut out, like carrots and beans. So, and the amount of food that we had for a while was quite reduced, and drinking a lot of water, and I lost a total of 18 kilos during that time, over about 5 months.
Wow. That's a massive loss.
I feel so much better for it, and as you know, I've had some major operations in terms of knees and hips, and taking that weight off was a planned decision and certainly worthwhile. Yeah, and has helped me a lot.
Yeah, well, like I said, I think between yourself and your wife, you look great for it.
Thanks.
18 kilos in 5 months is a massive loss. Maybe let's start with a little bit about who you are, where you've come from, what you do currently, what are you known for, that sort of stuff, so people can get a feeling as to who you are as a person.
Well, where I come from is a Greek. My father was a Greek immigrant. Came out here with very little. He was an only child, unusual for a Greek. And he virtually had nothing. His father had passed away, and he wanted an opportunity in life, and came out here by himself at a very young age. And my mother was a country girl who was educated in the city at a boarding school. And the two of them met, and then had myself and 3 other boys, and we lived sort of lower middle class Australian in the suburbs of Melbourne, and I think they provided us with a really good upbringing, and we lived in a comfortable environment, and they gave all of us a sense of worth and opportunity. Yeah.
Do you think that this is something I like to ask of everyone? Are there any particular lessons that you'd learnt, whether directly or indirectly? Maybe you'd seen them do it, or maybe they'd said it to you themselves, that you've learned over the years through either of your parents?
Well, I think clearly my father was a very determined person. Yeah. I mean, to leave Cyprus as an only child and venture over to the other side of the world with the £10 that the Australian government gave him in his pocket to come here was a pretty amazing decision and incredible effort, and then to create the life that he did was amazing. So I suppose what both my father and my mother offered us all of us was the confidence of their security and a never give in work ethic. My mother often used to say, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. And I've sort of lived by that. I've never been one to shirk the harder things to do in life. But I also like to enjoy the other side of it. But, a good work ethic is probably the thing that really came through. And, of course, I started my working life working with both my mother and father. So, right from the word go, it was whatever you did was of value rather than, find ways not to do something.
Yeah. And so what do you do now, and how did you start into your line of work? What have you done over the years? Because it's been quite different areas, hasn't it? I
have. I've worked in a number of industries, and in fact come full circle in that I originally completed an apprenticeship in printing as a letterpress offset printer, and I then went on to manage and grow and develop my father's small printing business with my brother, and we grew that into a fairly substantial business, and then through circumstances I moved out of that, and with my second wife I started a graphic design company that offered print production as well, and did that very successfully for a number of years until an opportunity came up through Kim to become involved in a luxury fashion business, predominantly handbags, luggage and accessories. And originally I was just going to be involved as an investor, but circumstances drew me further into the business, and I learned a lot of skills that you don't learn in a local printing business, even though the printing business was probably larger. But the fashion business was international, so I learned a lot of international trading skills, which was really valuable, and I enjoyed it, although it was probably not, although it was successful from the outside, financially it probably wasn't as rewarding as some of the other businesses I've been in. And we're still in that business today, but we've sized it back, and I've come full circle and just only recently become involved in a franchise digital printing business, and offering a full end-to-end service of graphic design and print, as well as outsourcing other types of printing. Yeah. And it really interested me. I like new challenges. I can get a little bit bored with staying in the one business, as is probably noted by what I've just said. But this business is not the sort of printing business I was in previously. It's totally digital, which has reflected the change in the printing industry over the last 20 years and the 15 years that I haven't been fully involved in it. Just on the outside, and what interests me about this was that we only have digital printing equipment, and it incorporates large format print production as well, and the fact that I can offer the creative element through our business gloss communications all the way through to the printed product has always been something that I like doing. Yeah. And so I'm involved in that, but I remain involved with Kim, helping her with the Spencer and Rutherford handbag business through financial and marketing assistance. Yeah.
Well, what is it that so attracts you about those businesses? Do you think it's because I've noticed that those businesses seem to have a physical thing as the end product? Are you the type that you find that you just really enjoy having something to show at the end of all your hard work?
Oh, most definitely, yeah. You know, when I'm at home, I enjoy gardening, and that gives you a chance to have an end product as well. So I'm fairly, I'm a visual person, and I like things that are aesthetically attractive, and so I think that printing and the uniqueness of Kim's handbags is what attracted me to it. Like I could never sell biros. You know, what's one biro to another? I'm sure there's some upmarket ones, but just in general business context, I like something that's fairly unique, and I hope that I'm able to deliver that with the new enterprise that I'm involved in. It will be that it's something unique. I've looked for digital printing equipment that offers some uniqueness in the market rather than just straightforward basic print production, something that we can specifically design for, and then are able to offer the end service to our customers in producing it as well. So it has to be interesting for me to be involved in it.
Do you think that the uniqueness is there something about telling the story about the uniqueness? Because I'm sort of the same. I find that when I was involved in the wine industry or hospitality, it was telling the story about the uniqueness of this product, which was what so, attracted me to it.
Well, telling the story, but also seeing it come from nowhere. I might just turn off my telephone, put it on silent.
What is that phone that you're using, by the way?
It's an iPhone.
7? 6?
6S.
Yeah. So yeah, telling the story is just a part of it, you think?
Yeah, it's got I like the fact that we create something quite unique.
Yeah.
And in the graphic design side of our business, I like to think that we can do something. Not always, I'm practical, and I'm commercially aware that you need to make sure the business is productive and profitable. So I won't just look for that unique product, but I think it's important to satisfy your own desires in business, and that for me includes creating something that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't do the handbag and the luggage if it was just black, cream and red leather handbags and black suitcases made out of the standard materials. And certainly Spencer and Rutherford is not that.
It definitely isn't. And by the way, we'll link all this stuff in the blog posts associated with this, so people can have a look at those handbags. I do really like them.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that, Jordan. Although I'd be a bit worried if you started wearing one.
Shout out to Kim. Do you have any principles or core beliefs that sort of help guide you with decision making, or how you progress through life that you've built up over the years?
Not necessarily.
Or do you think that hard work mentality is sort of like one of the key drivers? That
is definitely a core. I'm fairly pragmatic. I definitely like the idea of working for a result and seeing the returns on that result. But I don't have any. I've never really been someone that spends a lot of time reading about other successful people, or I've never really had a mentor. I just like to get on with it. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, get on with it.
Yeah,
it's a good mentality.
I must say that what of all the successful people that I look around at, Richard Branson really, I like the fact that he's created so many different things and started from, nowhere and created this amazing business empire. Is pretty exciting and gives you a lot of opportunity to reflect on on the opportunities of life.
Yeah. So if someone was to ask you the first person that comes to mind when you consider success, or the first thing that comes to mind, you'd say Richard Branson.
Perhaps. I think so.
I mean, how do you define success?
Well, someone that's been as successful as they possibly can be within their field of expertise. And as you know, I enjoy sport and Australian rules football, and I've played a lot of different sports in my life. And, you know, it can be admiring someone who, you know, is not an international or even a national star, just someone in my own competition that I've been involved in, because they've got the best out of themselves. And, you know, if I was to look at someone, you know, of a national sporting star stature, I'd say, well, you know, I follow the St Kilda Football Club, and I'd have to say that Nick Riewoldt is someone that's got the absolute best that he can get out of himself. You know, whether he's the best player or in the league or whatever, what I like is that he just made sure that he got the absolute best out of himself, and that he's quite well balanced. He now I see he has a young family and what have you. And that's what I like about people, is that they get the best out of themselves and they're committed to their family.
Yeah. Do you have any habits during the week? You know, do you make sure you get X amount of sleep? Do you do any meditation? Do you do... You know, I know you mentioned you had like an exercise regime. It's been knocked out because of the last few weeks or few months, things going on. But
well, I've been getting my new business in operation, but I try to go to gym 3 times a week in the morning. I tend to go Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And because, you know, I've had 2 school children up until a year or so ago. Now we've still got one. And Kim and I often, need to be around the house. So she goes on the Tuesday and Thursday morning, and I go on the Monday, Wednesday and Friday. Although my regime has been sort of knocked back over the last... I got out of the habit. I'm a bit of a habitual person, so I need to get back into that habit, and that's one of my New Year's goals, is to do that. And now that I get the business settled down, or it's in the process of settling in, I'll be able to get into that. Rituals...
do you find yourself reading a certain paper or articles in the morning?
Oh, definitely. I read the paper a lot. I used to read novels quite a bit, but I found ever since I sort of needed reading glasses, I don't read as much novels as I used to. Well, you know, I like to read. If I'm going to read, I read in bed, and I just found it a bit more difficult. You know, lying on your side, sort of looking through a lens, you're sort of in and out of focus. And anyway, it just cut me back in that. But what I do is I read newspapers on my phone and on my tablet a lot.
You love that tablet, don't you?
I do. Well, I tend to read it on my iPhone more now these days.
Really?
Yeah, on my 6S, it's big enough to read it on that.
Yeah.
So I've tended to use that.
Yeah. If you were to gift a book to someone, you know, one book that has affected you the most in your life, what would it be?
Well, I don't know whether I'd gift it to anybody, because, as I say, I've never really been mentored by or found anything where anyone that I particularly want to look up to. So I've read about their life story or whatever. I've read some, but none that, you know, that I go, oh, that's impacted on my life to the point of wanting to pass it on. You'll probably find this a strange answer, but of all the things that I've read, I think as a very young person, in my late teens and early 20s, I used to read Wilbur Smith novels.
Okay.
And that created a great interest in Africa, and and I always wanted to visit Africa because of those books, and I did with my family about 6 years ago. It was a life-defining event for all of us, seeing the natural environment and seeing the large, iconic animals of Africa in their natural environment was quite incredible, and my children still talk about it over the dinner table.
So I had no idea. Wilbur Smith, so that was something that you were really into when you were younger?
Yeah, I just found it interesting. He wove a good story, and I found it quite invigorating.
Yeah. And so where did you go to when you were in Africa?
Well, we were on safari in Tanzania for the majority of the time. We were also in Kenya, and then we went over to the island of Zanzibar for a period of time.
Okay.
And spent some time there. But it was the safari in Tanzania that was just an incredible experience.
Yeah.
You know, we saw all the major beasts of Africa. You know, lion, rhino, crocodile, in its own natural environment, and cheetah and all of that, water buffalo. It was just quite incredible. And we saw them in their truly natural environment. We saw lions getting their meal.
Feed, yeah.
Yeah, it was quite incredible.
Yeah, I remember I've seen photos. There was a leopard or a cheetah at some point that had caught something?
Well, particularly a young lioness, took down a wildebeest, and it was incredible. Something that I'd say to everybody, it's worthwhile seeing, because then you really do get an impression of the circle of life.
Yeah. It's one of those things that I love seeing, and people, I find it amusing when people say things like, "Oh, look at that cute fluffy bear or lion," or they sort of anthropomorphize it, like, and then there's a particular, I don't know if you've seen this on Facebook or maybe it's on Twitter, but it's called Nature is Scary. And it's literally just little pieces of footage about things like that.
No, I haven't actually seen that.
It's quite amazing.
Yeah.
Like a thing like a polar bear which has just killed another polar bear's cub.
Right.
Just showing people that this is reality.
This is how it works.
This is how it works, yeah.
Or a male lion coming into a new pack and
just killing all the cubs.
Killing the cubs, yeah.
Is there something that you get out of that in particular? Does it just sort of ground you a bit when you see that sort of stuff?
Oh, yeah, when you're watching it happen, it's actually hard to believe that it's actually happening, We saw, as you mentioned, you've seen photographs, and what you probably recall is this young lioness taking down a wildebeest, and the effort involved in it, and the wildebeest fighting for its life.
Yeah.
And in some cases succeeding, and in other cases not.
Yeah.
And you realise just how fragile life can be, not only in that situation, but in life in general. So yeah, I think it's good to get away from, the daily humdrum of work and the things, the environment the safe environment we live in, and just seeing the other side of life. Part of our safari was not just seeing the animals, but it was visiting the people and seeing the nomadic tribes of Africa and how they lived, and in some cases how difficult it was for them, and it really did give you a sense of gratitude for where we live.
Exactly. Do you think you'll go back sometime soon?
Absolutely, yeah.
What took you so long to get there?
Money. I know, when I say money, probably children, and the cost of raising children. It was a big trip, and we sort of needed them to be the right age before we went on that sort of a family holiday, and they were old enough to appreciate it and understand it, but not be too frightened by it.
Yeah. maybe while we're talking about children, because I've got some questions for you on this. I think that having seen, your kids and so you got 3 kids.
I have, yeah.
They seem to be brought up in a way that they're just good people, if that makes sense. You may argue otherwise as a parent, but they seem grounded. They haven't had a hard life, maybe as say you have. That you.
Yeah, they've been more privileged than I was in their childhood. There's no doubt about that.
But yet they seem quite grounded, at least.
Yeah, I certainly like to think so. My older daughter's now in her early 30s and has 2 children, and one of the great feelings in life I've found is seeing her develop a family unit and be so happy in that unit now and be carving out her own life with her husband and her 2 children. I've only started to really see that, although we do spend time with them. We go away with them each year on a beach holiday. But it's really coming home now that her second child is just turning 2, and they seem very happy together, and that is a great feeling, sense of thankfulness that I have. I like to think my kids are pretty well balanced. A lot of that's due to my wife. She's been a big influence both on our 2 children and also my older daughter, who is not her natural daughter.
Yeah. Do the 2 of you have any particular principles that you have around raising children? Like, how do you come to making decisions together? And
we've always found it easy to work together to make decisions. It's why we've worked together for so long, as well as as man and wife. The one thing that we decided early on is that you need to have taught them right and wrong, or shown them right and wrong by the time they're 12.
Okay.
Because I don't listen to you a lot after that.
So you got this lesson in the first child, I'm guessing, then?
Well, no, Cher, I was very lucky. My oldest daughter was, we were quite lucky. She never went through any of the dramas that a lot of kids tend to go through at 15 to 18. She had her moments, but, really she was quite a balanced kid. And again, we worked together for more than 10 years when she finished university, and even during university. In fact, between VCE and going to uni, she spent a year working in the business with me and worked really closely with Kim and I, particularly myself. And so we always had a great rapport. My youngest 2 probably lived a bit more of a privileged life than Cher. We've been a little bit more secure, and yet they're both already showing. Isabella's showing the same sort of entrepreneurial interest as a lot of the Michaelides do, including yourself. And it's a great encouragement to me that she's of that nature.
Yeah.
Mason, I'm yet to see. He's 15 years and he likes to sit in front of his computer and play games, which most 15-year-old boys do.
Yeah.
But he's a really good kid.
He is a good kid. Like I said, I think that they just seem to be grounded. So, based on what you said, it seems that up to 12 years... teach them right versus wrong. It's very hard. Do you think that it's hard to do much else from that point?
Oh, and I still think it's ongoing forever, being a parent. But I think if you haven't got the basics down by then you've got problems. You then might have to deal through bigger issues than you'd like to have to deal through. I suppose it's the same with business. people like direction. Most people like direction. It's why not everybody wants to be the owner or the boss of a business, because most people like to know what's coming up and what they've got to do. And if you don't give them some direction, a lot of people flounder a little bit. So it's good to give initial sort of direction and then let people use their own judgment to add value to whatever you're involved in, rather than, you can't tell people what to do all the time. You've just got to teach them what you think is the right way or the best way, and then they have to find out for themselves, sometimes by making mistakes. I don't think it matters whether they're your child or whatever. And I think that's part of being an owner of a business is determining, is being willing to make a decision and see it through.
Yeah.
But give people the capacity to be involved in that decision making and then empower them to get on with it. I think micromanagement in a business is the worst thing.
It is terrible.
Yeah.
Having been under it myself, it's just it's stifling.
Yeah, it just doesn't. It doesn't give anybody any satisfaction. The boss doesn't get any satisfaction because he's back there working late at night because he hasn't allowed people to get on and do their job in the first place.
Yeah.
So, and the other side of it is the employee goes home totally unsatisfied.
Yeah. Have you noticed any common mistakes made by parents? We're not saying that, you're the perfect parent, but
far from it, Jordan, far from it.
Have you noticed any common mistakes made by others? Things that you notice that may cause issues over the years?
Yeah, I think if you can be, some parents can be a bit overbearing.
Yeah.
I don't think that helps. On the other side, the worst thing is not to be there, is to not give any direction.
Yeah.
And too many I've seen in recent years is that why parents seem to feel they don't have to parent. It's more important to be a friend than a parent.
Yeah, I haven't noticed that.
And being a friend doesn't work. I mean, again, as I mentioned, people like direction, particularly children. So you need to give some boundaries.
Yeah. How does parenting, or how do you stop parenting affecting the relationship? Like, one of the things I noticed a few years ago was when, yourself and Kim started talking about, maybe she mentioned it, you always have like a date night or something like that.
Yeah, we do. It sort of dropped off a little bit, but we do make a point of it. It was particularly when our children were younger and demanded a lot of our time. We once a week, or at least once a fortnight.
Yeah.
We'd have a date night where we'd incur the cost of a babysitter, and we'd go out and go to a movie or have dinner or both.
Yeah. Do you think that's important to the relationship?
Oh, absolutely. One of the things that we vowed as part of our joining ceremony was. A lot of people tend to think that when you get married, your life becomes one, whereas what we said is that it becomes three. Yours, mine, and ours.
Yeah.
And so you still got to remain faithful to yourself, not become, not just become a part of someone else's life.
Yeah.
You got to retain your own life.
Yeah. I remember someone had said that to me, that you are individuals and you need to improve yourself, but there is the relationship as well that is a separate entity in a way.
So it's sort of three lives in a way.
Yeah. Do you guys have any family rituals, things that you find yourself doing together on a regular basis?
Yeah, absolutely. We eat our evening meal together most nights. At least 4 out of the 7 nights, probably 5, because really Sunday would as well. Saturday and Friday maybe not as much, but Isabella's a bit older now, so she's often out, so that's reduced a bit. But she would cook at least once a week for the family. Probably in recent times twice, because we've been busy. But we all sit at the table together and eat. It's fairly important to us that we have that time together and we enjoy it. It's fun.
Do you have any particular fond memories during your childhood that you look back at now?
I don't necessarily look back on any particular thing. I played a lot of junior football when I was young, and so there was a lot of times there where I have some fond memories of some achievements, etc. But on top of that, myself and 2 of my brothers that were similar age to me were fairly rebellious in our teens and and so we didn't necessarily toe the line as much as we should. But all of that was quite formative and I think good for us.
Yeah.
We got a lot of things out of the way early.
What were some of the, because this always amazes me hearing some of these stories, what were some of the ridiculous antics that you guys used to get up to?
Oh, I think
that you're willing to tell.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think we'll leave that for other times, Jordan.
Okay. Going back to business, is there, is there anything that you've learnt in particular over the years of running different businesses?
Well, as a boss, you can't have too big an ego. If your ego's too big, you haven't got staff that'll enjoy working with you. You got to be a bit humble.
Ego is the enemy.
Yeah. You have to be humble in your approach. But having said that, you also need to be true to your own beliefs as well. So I'd say mainly that. I don't know how people would see me as a boss. I'd like to think that I'm reasonably fair, but I like to do things my way. So, and I'm the one taking the risk. So I often think that's the part that swings. If there's an uncertainty in the way something should be done, that swings it in my favour for making the final decision.
Yeah. Because no doubt over the years you would have had some tough moments.
Yeah,
in
I have.
Business.
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
If you've been in business for that long, you no doubt would have had some existential business problems. When you're in those moments, how do you deal with it? Do you just push forward, or do you seek inspiration? Have you ever felt that you need to seek inspiration elsewhere to keep pushing forward?
Well, I have a good work buddy in my wife, so that's always been really handy, and she's a bit more of a thinker than me, so often she'll sort of see it from another direction, which is really valuable.
Yeah.
But I do tend to think things through. I'm more of a thinker rather than a planner, so I'll usually find a good solution, and then I will work my way through it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you let's say you had a class of school leavers who all thought that they wanted to start a business. They just finished high school, they're about 18, and you had 2 weeks to teach them what you know or what's important to business. What do you think you'd start with, or what do you think that you'd teach them?
Well, the first thing I'd teach them would be to go out and get a job rather than start their own business straight away, because I think, although I worked for my father for a short period and then took over the operation of his business at a very young age, and I don't think that's the best way to do it, looking back on it, at all. So I think it's good to get a good grounding working for someone. I've always sort of struggled with knowing what the other side of the coin is like, because I've pretty much always been the boss or very close to the boss. So
do you think being an employee sort of builds a bit more empathy or compassion, maybe?
Well, from my point of view, knowledge, in that I actually don't know what it's like to be on the other side.
Yeah.
So, no, I've got empathy for being an employee just through having sort of had many of them over the years now. But it's not that I have never seen it personally from that side of the fence, ever.
Right.
And I think that would be really helpful. The other thing I'd say to them is, you know, if they're a bit older after they've got their job, and if they're in a relationship, I think the best structure is where one of the two in the relationship, in the husband and wife relationship, one is entrepreneurial and may run their own business, but the other should get a really secure position. So there's that really good balance.
Yeah.
Between in the family environment.
Yeah.
It allows you to take a little bit more risk on the one side, and on the other side, it gives you both a little bit of security.
Do you think that is that something that you've just decided over the last few years, or that you've always thought?
I've felt it now, you know, probably for the last 10 or 15 years, certainly the last 10. I could just see that's, I suppose you get a bit older and you see the effort in starting and running businesses and what have you, and then friends that have been in long-term secure positions with larger organisations, and the security of their superannuation and long-term employment gives them in the latter part of their life, I think is quite valuable.
Yeah.
Not that I could do it personally. I just couldn't do that. But I see the value in it.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing that I've noticed, particularly in the startup industry, that people will do that. You have the one that will go out of their way to be the entrepreneur, while the other will, for a long time, just remain in a job that provides security.
I think it's a good structure.
Yeah.
Not one that you necessarily should look for in a partner, but it's just one that, if it works out, is a really good balanced situation.
Yeah. What do you think has never changed in what's the one constant across these businesses that you've noticed over the years that you've been involved?
Hard work. Yeah, well, they're small businesses, so adaptability more than hard work. Adaptability, I think, being able to do different types of things in the business, marketing, finance, getting your hands dirty, whatever it needs. If you're in a business, you need to be willing to do it.
Yeah. If you could change your pathway over the last 15 years, let's say, would you in any way?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I probably would have stayed in my core business rather than get too distracted into the handbags. I really enjoyed marketing and developing the opportunities in that business, but because I didn't necessarily have a great rapport personally with the end product, although I know them extremely well. I've done the costing, and I've been involved in at length with Kim in her sort of bouncing her ideas off me and her designs, etc. It's not what it's not my core skills, in that my origins. My origins are print and design and design for print, and we're fairly successful in that, and I wonder where that might have taken me if I'd stayed focused in that.
Yeah. Do you feel that maybe it could be that making handbags isn't scratching your own itch?
Yeah, that's it. There was always a point where I didn't necessarily, I didn't go out and get involved in the industry and what have you. We just did what we did, and so that yeah, I think it's a good way of putting it. Didn't sort of scratch my itch.
Yeah.
But I have enjoyed it. We did some interesting things, and it's taken me to all parts of the world, and I've sold in major capitals of the world and presented at trade shows and bought materials and manufactured around the world. So it was some great learning experiences, and I wouldn't change any of that. But it did distract me more than I'd intended to for a period of time.
Yeah. I think. Actually, I'm interested to know, what do you think has sort of remained from the time that you had in, say, the fashion industry and you were able to travel quite a bit? Are there any things that you notice as an outsider in particular?
In what way? What? Give me an example.
Maybe it was just some of the... I'm thinking things that were missed by people when they first get into the industry.
Oh, definitely. From that point of view, well, the first thing I think I've noticed is that it's a little bit. Well, first of all, it's really hard. It's harder than a service business or whatever, because you're designing and manufacturing months, half a year out from when you take it to market, and then you have to then get paid for it and so forth, or you have to then take it the next step and market into the retail world yourself as well. And we've had experience of both of that. So I think that people don't realise the amount of investment that needs to go into it, because you're halfway through the process of your first season and you're already starting your second season. Yeah. So I think a lot of younger kids come out of design school and think that they can get into it straight away and design their own product, and of course they actually get into the production of it and realise they don't have the capital.
Yeah.
And then if you're taking it around the world and you're doing trade shows in Paris and New York and London, that takes a lot of capital resource to do that.
It's unique in that it's capital and employee intensive, isn't it?
Very. And it's all up front.
Yeah.
And you're taking a risk because you're presuming people are going to like what you design. And if they don't, you're stuck with it. It's very hard then to get rid of. Luckily, we haven't had that issue, but that's so. There's that side of it that I don't think young designers just realise how much capital is required and the effort that goes into it. And I've seen so many brands come and go so quickly. And then the other side of it is the whole PR and the glossy side of that business. It sort of
marketing there is a lot harder.
Well, we've actually found that marketing our brand, because we've got a fairly unique product, hasn't come wasn't too difficult. It's just more the whole. I didn't like the glossiness of that particular business, in that it seemed to be glazed over a bit. It was, the PR made it look a lot rosier than what it is for so many people. It looks really fun and interesting from the outside, but it's really quite hard work.
Yeah.
It really is.
So everyone looks like they're bright and they're happy and it's all luxurious, but under the surface it's a hard slog.
Well, it's often, young designers with being themselves and maybe, if they're lucky, one other person trying to get this product, brand, PR, everything happening together. And I've seen so many of them work so hard, and eventually, under the weight of the expectation and the pressure of the really big brands of the world, fall over. And it's a bit sad, really, because it's not through lack of hard work. I think I've certainly seen a lot of hard work in that industry.
Yeah. Well, if someone was to counteract those issues, what would you suggest?
In how to counteract them?
Yeah. You know, if you were... If a designer was trying to start out in this day and age, what would be a better way of going about it? Are there better ways of testing their product? Are there better ways of marketing it nowadays?
Again, I think it's worthwhile testing. You know, it's easy to say because it's hard to get a job. But if you can, to work in an environment, if you can, and find out what's involved before you jump in, and find that, you know, you thought you're jumping in at the shallow end and you're jumping in at the 12-foot end and you can't swim.
Yeah.
I think I've always found that that's not although I didn't do it and I'm only presuming, I think working in an industry first is best before you take the risk of being your own, working for yourself.
Yeah. I want to switch to these faster paced questions now.
Sure.
Questions that we ask all guests. What's something that people never ask you that you wish they did?
Gee, I don't know. It's a hard one. It's supposed to be fast, but I don't think I can answer that in a fast way.
Doesn't have to be too fast.
I can't immediately think of an answer there. I don't wish that anybody asks me anything specifically that they ask me. No, I can't give you an answer to that one.
What are you most proud of?
My family.
Okay. If you know TED Talks, don't you? They're like these talks, these conferences. It's a little bit cultish. It's a little bit weird, but TED is like a group that hosts these talks. They've got a big website, YouTube channel, all that sort of stuff. If you were to host a talk about any topic other than business, what would it be? Something that you love.
Something that I love?
Yeah.
It'd have to be Australian rules football. That's probably what I'm most knowledgeable in.
Imagine that in front of an American crowd. That would be fascinating.
I think it would be quite challenging and interesting, actually.
Yeah. Because
it is the greatest game in the world.
Yes. Who do you barrack for?
Of course you know the answer to that. We sit next to each other.
What have you changed your mind about over the last few years?
What have I changed my mind about in a big way? Working too hard at the gym. I've decided that as I get older, I've got to be less strenuous on my body and just
smarter.
Just go to the gym and not try and work it to the bone. It's actually better to go and come away still feeling comfortable rather than absolutely worn out.
Yeah.
That's been quite a substantial change for me.
Yeah.
Because I used to tend to push things to the limit with whatever I did.
How did you used to work out versus now?
I'd do strenuous cardio and then I'd do my weights.
Oh, really?
And then stretch, yeah.
Okay.
So it was it's changed quite a lot.
Yeah. What's been the best purchase under $200 over the last year? Something that you felt has had a pretty good impact.
Oh, you're going to laugh at this. The best purchase that I've made, and I've done it a few times now, is the second power cord for my computer, so I don't have to pack it every time I go from home to work. Because it used to drive me insane, and it takes up a lot of space.
No, a lot of people do that. That's good. I like that. So 2 power cords always.
One at work, one at home.
What's the laptop that you use?
I've got an Acer at the moment, but I've just bought a Surface, Microsoft Surface Pro.
The new Pro.
Yeah, Pro 4, and when we're finished, I'm setting that up with
Chris.
With Chris, yeah.
This is a really tough question for some people, so don't be surprised if you can't answer all 5. But what are your 5 favourite non-musical sounds?
Well, my latest one is the laugh of my granddaughter.
Okay. She certainly knows how to giggle.
Yeah. And scream, actually.
Oh, yeah. Actually, more scream, less giggle.
Oh, no, more giggle. More giggle. My 5 favourite sounds. The sound of my wife's articulated voice.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking the punt of a Sharon.
Yeah, only if I was doing it, and I'm not that good at it anymore. The sound of my fairly recently purchased car. It's got a great note on it.
Oh. What is this car?
It's an Audi SQ5,
okay.
And it's got it's a diesel, but I think somehow they've added some I don't know, into the sound system. They've added something so it doesn't sound like a diesel. It sounds great.
Yeah.
That's 3. Well, of course, the cheer of the Saints when they win. It'd be nice to hear it when we win a grand final in a premiership, but
it would be lovely.
Yeah. But that's always good. I'm sure there's some others that I can't readily bring to mind. I do like an espresso coffee. So
maybe
the sound and smell of that is quite good. The espresso machine.
There's your 5. What's the most interesting question that you've heard recently, and what was the answer? You may have heard it indirectly, or you could have been sitting at the table when someone asked it.
Oh, look, I'm sure there's a number of them, but I'm not good with memory of that sort of thing. I think of them at the time, but then not necessarily retain them readily. So I can't actually recall.
Okay. What sort of forms part of your everyday toolkit? You said before you use an iPhone 6S.
Yeah,
was it?
Yeah.
Do you have any apps or other things that you find yourself using on a regular basis?
Well, I'm regularly going to the back end of our Spencer and Rutherford website, checking out how we're progressing. I like watching and following the weather. So I use the weather app.
Yeah, right. Why is that? Is that because there's 4 seasons in a day in Melbourne?
Yeah, and as a Melburnian, the weather does change. And when I grew up, you had the newspaper in the morning, and that was it, which was giving you sort of the weather chart from the day before. Whereas, of course, now with a weather map, I mean, we're up in a friend's place in Buxton for over the New Year weekend, and you just click over to Buxton, and and you're getting all the weather movement in that area. I find it interesting. And when we go down to Merimbula, or up to Merimbula each Christmas. We didn't go this year because we're moving house, but we sit we basically spend the whole time on the beach, and we love it.
Yeah.
And sort of knowing the weather is important, so we're always checking that out and see what's moving across, and which beach to go boogie boarding at depends on the direction of the wind. So weather app. I tend to use the Footy Live app and the Cricket app. And, of course, unfortunately, my banking app, I'm constantly checking that for the various businesses.
Yeah. This is a tough question, but I found that most people have been able to answer it. You can be asked a few ways. So what is something you believe that nearly no one agrees with you on? Or what important truth do very few people agree with you on? or what insight about life seems maybe obvious to you but not so obvious to others?
Well, I think the really obvious one there is owning your own business. That people, there is this sort of feeling, particularly amongst the press, that owning your own business, is the easy life. But running your own business is lots of extra hours and hard work, and you've got to really want to do it.
Yeah.
So that'd be the major one.
Yeah, I think that's sort of like that survivorship bias. People say, like, what's really annoying me now is there's things that go around on LinkedIn, like, Mark Zuckerberg was, someone posted about him, he asked 5 friends to have a meeting about Facebook and only 2 turned up, and it's, what would happen if you don't turn up to every meeting type scenario is what this post was playing. And it's, well, not every meeting turns into shares in Facebook.
Yeah, that's right.
It is, you're right. Like, a lot of people, one person said it to me is in this way, that you're essentially just switching your boss from someone who's got guaranteed income to yourself who doesn't have guaranteed income.
Yeah.
So you're adding that extra pressure. So I like that. That's a good one.
Yeah, it is a good one. You've certainly got to be a risk taker.
Yeah. If you were to give advice to, say, your 20, 30 or 40-year-old self, what would it be at those different stages?
Don't expect too much too quickly.
Okay. And why is that?
Because it doesn't happen.
Did you find that I just find that I'm always, you're always sort of rushed to get things done mentally. You're always feeling like it's the be-all and end-all. Is it that you've just noticed that things take time?
Yeah, and make sure you smell the roses. I think that's a really important one. I tend to work a bit too much, and I get that good advice from my wife. Just enjoy it a little bit.
Yeah. If you could have a billboard anywhere in the world that could say anything, where would it be and what would it say?
Well, other than a Spencer and Rutherford billboard in New York saying Spencer and Rutherford handbags, luggage, accessories, inspiring and unique, what would it be? Other than really marketing my business, I don't want to say you make too loud a noise. So. Yeah. Another one would be good, be able to put up in Melbourne, would be St Kilda Premiers 2017.
God, imagine that. It's funny because I was listening to Will Anderson on his podcast a couple of weeks ago, and just him talking about how he's like, I could die. Like, I have lived my life. And one of the other things he said was none of them will ever be the same. If we were to win a premiership now, it just won't be the same.
No.
That he spoke about just that euphoric feeling of, and the surrealism. Because when you go for those who don't know St Kilda, they have only won one premiership, but the surrealism of
in 100 and something years.
Yeah, it's sort of like the Chicago Cubs of, is it the Cubs? Chicago Cubs of baseball.
Yeah.
They only won I think it was their second cup or World Series ever recently.
First.
Or was it the first?
It was the first time ever.
I just remember reading about that,
10
thinking,
years or something.
Wow. Because I've read the book Moneyball.
It's great, isn't it?
Oh, man. That guy, Michael Lewis, knows how to write a book. But the movie was very good as well.
Yeah, I thought the movie was terrific. They got it across well. That was particularly interesting, that the Chicago... I think it's Cubs. I think you're right.
I'm pretty sure it's Cubs.
Yeah. Anyway,
because it was in Back to the Future. Cubbies won the World Series.
Well, a young a boy in Mason's class and in his basketball team, an Indian boy from India, not American Indian, but lived in Chicago, and his father had just been transferred over here last year. At the beginning of last year, beginning of 2016. And he joined Mason's team, but they went back. They're keen followers for it, and they went back because they'd made the playoffs and stayed there and went to all the games. So it was sort of close as we it sort of made us short in the basketball team because other boys were at school camp and what have you. But Arusha and his father went back for the series, and of course came back absolutely ecstatic.
Yeah,
because they'd won their first one.
I really hope they can do it. It's just
in my lifetime, anyway.
Yeah, it's just the one thing I want to see. Do you have any historical figures that you most identify with? So someone that isn't here today.
That I relate to and think about.
That you
of course,
sort of
my
really...
father, certainly, but I've never, as I said, I've sort of never been one that's had a mentor or had a great, I've got to do what they do, type person.
Like, is there anyone that you sort of have a real affinity for? Like, because I think with Dad, he really loves Winston Churchill.
As I say, I don't really sort of do enough of. I don't have a great. I don't follow things that way. I'm more interested in things that have happened or the way things might happen rather than a person.
Yeah. What music are you currently listening to on your playlist?
Well, I always listen to Snow Patrol. My kids give me a hard time about it. They think I'm obsessed.
Probably are.
What I like about them is that about that group is that they are unbelievably talented. The lead singer is super charismatic, and they combine their music with great lyrics. They write all their own music. He's as much a poet as he is a songwriter. And they could have been anything, but they've stayed true to the fact that they just wanted to be really good at what they did, and didn't want to take over the world and be a supergroup or anything like that. And it's very rare to get to see them. I was very lucky. About 4 years ago, Kim and I got the chance to see them. I'd been in hospital for an operation, and I basically came out of hospital to go and see them. And I was so glad. It wasn't even the full group. It was an acoustic concert by the lead singer and one of the other guys. It was fantastic. And so they're always sort of up there. But then I'm a great
Coldplay.
I like Coldplay, and of course it was just at the concert, and it was unbelievable. But I like sort of my era of music. I'm a great David Bowie fan, Sting, all that, Rolling Stones. So I have playlists with a mixture. Bruce Springsteen. I'm going to Bruce Springsteen next month.
That's right. Yeah. If you were, maybe we'll cap this off with the final question. But do you see yourself in a future where you're not involved in business, and if so, what would you be doing? What would you be spending? Do you see yourself ever sort of retiring and doing something, spending your time doing something?
Absolutely, else? Yeah. I would have probably, although I enjoy to continue working now, but Kim and I had plans of perhaps going down this other course earlier on in life, and both of my kids would be able to answer this question for you without hesitation.
Really?
Yeah, about what I'd be doing. Kim and I have a great desire to hook up a really nice van.
Ah, yes.
And travel Australia, and if we really enjoy that, and we'll do a short trip first because we mightn't like it because we haven't sort of done it, but we've just had this. I suppose the luxury of the freedom of it really attracts us because, I've basically worked for myself since I was a kid.
Yeah.
And so that's always really been something that Kim and I want to do. And but I think we'll do something while we're travelling, for me through the internet, whether it be investment or something of that nature. Maybe I'll get the chance to read again. But Kim wants to paint, so I'll certainly help her in doing that. Maybe I'm the guy that makes the frames, etc., and the canvases. But
so a big trip around Australia's first on
well,
the cards.
just even if there are lots of little ones, but we just see that as being something we'd like to do.
Yeah.
I think it's the thought of the freedom of, and I said to her, there's no way I'll ever do it while we've still got a business. I do not want to have to think. I don't want to be, in the middle of some outback place looking at an unbelievable scene of Australian coastline or something and be thinking about a problem that someone's phoned me up on or whatever. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, no, I can imagine that.
So, that's a really strong one.
Is there any place in particular, if you were to do this trip, that you and Kim have always said that you have to go to? Is there a particular image that you've seen in the past where you just go, we've got to go there?
No. In fact, it's the places we haven't been the more outback and remote, or the further distances. Like we've never travelled, up the west coast. I've only been to Perth a couple of times and then travelled down to Margaret River, but never been up that coast or across the top. The furthest I've got is Cairns, Port Douglas sort of area, and even then only for short periods. We're sort of the traditionalists. We've done the Gold Coast. We've done, we go to Marimula since our kids were sort of, or for the last 8 or 9 years, pretty much. So we found that was a great family holiday. We like the sea, so just travelling around the coast of Australia will give us great enjoyment.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
It's okay. It was great.
Good.
Yeah, we enjoyed it.
Good little session. Got over the hour. I know you're a busy guy, so I wanted to cap it at that. So, thank you.
Thanks, Jordan.
Cheers.
I much appreciated it.
And one thing I'll add actually is if people wanted to find you on any form of social media, we'll link all of Spencer and Rutherford and Gloss and all your projects in the post. But do you sit on LinkedIn or Twitter or Facebook?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. I don't do a lot of it. Now that I'm back in a more broader sense in terms of graphic design and printing, which provides services to a much broader range of industry than handbags, I'll probably be a little bit more active on my LinkedIn account. I'm on Facebook more because I like to just keep contact with a few people and see what people are doing.
Yeah.
But no, I'm not. Twitter I don't use. Instagram, I'm not big on YouTube really. I just find I don't have the time.
Yeah, fair enough.
But certainly my if you put up the information about our new business or our new service, broader service, Gloss Communications, right through to the printed product at Quick Copy in William Street, which is where we're sitting right now, that would be great. If people want to look us up, we're going to be doing some really interesting things. I hope we are. And we'll certainly be striving to do something unique and different.
Cool. Well, thank you.
Thanks, Jordan.
Good. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you for making it this far. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Make sure you leave us a review and head to naral.com/podcast to learn about our prizes, show notes, and gain priority access as a cognitive insider. Don't forget to like us on Facebook or Twitter. It's just @Neurale, NEURALLE. Until next episode, thanks for listening.